Welcome. I'm not gonna do it today because I know you guys are playing a little bingo game, and that welcome B is in the center, and it makes it too easy for you guys. But I just heard some special news before we start this podcast, and I just want to give my little teddy bear over there in the other picture frame a big hug and shout out because he is a #1 bestseller. The Expanse is kicking ass.
#1 on Amazon.
#1 on Amazon. What I mean,
#1 on Amazon.
Amazon is everything. I mean, if you're #1 on Amazon, that's basically.
It doesn't mean you're automatically going to be like #1 on the New York Times bestseller list.
Okay, but
that's a pretty tough nut to crack.
What's the future? Amazon or the New York Times bestseller list?
Probably Amazon.
Probably Amazon. Amazon, I think, is the more important marker at this point. Unless you get on the New York Times bestseller list, then we'll definitely, pump that one too.
Well, we'll see what happens. So my highest ranking ever on the New York Times bestseller list was 4. Right. 4 was the best we've ever done. So we'll see if we can get back to 4, which was crazy high.
When you got to 4, wasn't King like number 5 or 6 in that moment when you first got to 4?
I don't know. I don't remember. I have like my publisher sent me a plaque with the list when we got to number 4 and all of that stuff to like commemorate it.
Yeah.
I don't remember who is also on the list.
Now, granted, King has lived on that list for 40 years.
For 40 years.
But
yeah, like there has never been a week where a King book wasn't on that list.
But having your name where you can see his name and your name in the same list, that's pretty amazing. But it's #1 in Kindle. And what other category is it #1 in?
Well, if you're #1 in Kindle, then you're also #1 in a million other categories because it cascades down from there.
Right.
So we're #1 in Kindle, which means we're also #1 in science fiction and, #1 in a bunch of other subcategories.
So this is probably, when did the book come out?
Yesterday.
All right. So what you're saying is this is probably going to be your last podcast because why do this? Well, why hang out with the riffraff?
I do feel like my mortgage is probably going to be paid.
Hey, listen,
yeah.
This podcast ain't paying nobody's mortgage. So
that's true. Yeah, the $0 I make on this podcast.
The negative dollars I make on this podcast is for the joy. Is to be able to hang out with you and hang out with important, prestigious writers.
At least what this podcast does is generate enough money so that we can pay Joseph so that his daughter doesn't have to eat like boiled shoes anymore.
Yeah.
Which was really the most important thing.
Right.
We got to keep his daughter from being forced to live on boiled shoes.
She's eating a better grade of boiled shoe.
Nice.
Yeah, we gave her a lot of our leftover shoes. So
hey,
it's not,
as long as this kid has moved up to eating Nikes.
Yeah.
And she's not eating Keds anymore, then we're good.
It's not like it's not like we don't help out a little bit. I mean, we do what we can. What are we talking about today, Ty?
I have no idea. What are we talking about today?
We're talking about a little show called The Expanse, Season 4, Episode 3, written by a friend of the show, Danny Nowak on the attack, director David Petrarca, and I want to...
Petrarca, yeah.
That's right. Petrarca. I want to give a little shout-out to Petrarca because this episode was pretty spectacular. I love Westerns, and he really, like, the visual and the cinematography of this episode was a little special, I thought, coming to season 3. It looked different than the first 2. I just thought the cinematography was incredible, and it felt like I was in a Western, and I've always wanted to be in a Western, and that's, season 4 has a lot of similarities to Western. And there was a lot of cowboy shots. There's one shot that I really loved when me and Mercury are staring each other over the vast open wasteland, and we know that we're headed for a showdown. And when I say cowboy shots, there's a cowboy shot is basically it's bigger than a medium, but it's smaller than a wide. And they created that. They started calling them cowboy shots because they started doing that shot in Westerns because they want to see the guns.
It's also a cowboy shot because it's low angle.
The low angle is a characteristic of Westerns, doing the low angle shots, but the cowboy shot specifically referring to the size of the screen, the size of the shot. Yeah. And they have it in a certain way because they want to capture the guns. And because it's been what they use it in Cowboys so much, but it just looks so heroic and iconic. It's just badass to see it.
Well, it makes everybody seem like they're huge.
Uh-huh.
It's those heroic, like, three-quarter figure towering over the camera kind of shots.
I want to put in my contract, like, for the next movie or show, and I just want to be shot at in the cowboy shot the whole time.
That's the only angle anyone's allowed to use on you.
The only shot is the cowboy shot.
See, Wes, you know what you and I should do is, and Daniel, we should write and shoot and produce an indie Western, like a little indie Western together, man. And not shoot anybody on the set.
Yeah, that's probably
differentiate ourselves.
Yeah, that's probably a plus. I want to be careful about this, but there are things that I read on a daily basis, and I look at this and I'm like, okay, so they got good money to go do this script, and it's a genre that we love, and and they're offering this thing, and I look at it and I'm not, I look at it and say, why don't you just find a good script and use that money to make something good with it, And so there are times where I'm like, man, I got to get my buddy Ty over here and write a good classic horror movie. I
told you, man. So you need to get to the level as an actor where you can demand that your script doctor comes in and fixes scripts for you, and then just have me be your script doctor, the way Tom Cruise uses Chris McQuarrie.
Yeah, all right, I'm on that. Yeah. And then so when you do your pass, all it has is Wes in cowboy shot, and then blah 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 A, B, and C. But it made me think of some of my favorite westerns, some of my favorite shot westerns, and I think the perfect western, and it's perfect for many reasons, but visually. Is Unforgiven, the iconic Unforgiven. The Western was being perfected, but when it hit its first apex, because I think the Unforgiven was really kind of closing the door to that.
Unforgiven feels like the end of the Western.
The end of the Western.
Yeah.
And it kind of, it tells the truth. It tells the truth underlining all the other Westerns. So that, you think about the Westerns out of the 50s and the 60s and how it's the good guy in the white hat and everything. And then you have something like The Unforgiven, it just kind of shatters all that. But The Searchers, I remember watching The Searchers. My dad was a huge Searchers fan, and he was a big John Ford fan and loved John Wayne. But visually, whenever I think of a Western, I think of The Searchers. I think of the way that was shot visually.
And Ford was the guy who brought in all of those huge shots of like vast vistas, like huge shots of like prairie or huge with mountains towering in the distance. It was all those big, wide open shots that he would do. And then a guy and a horse would appear and they were tiny, and you got that sense of scale, that sense of like the unexplored West that these people are trying to make a way in. He loved those shots.
I read John Wayne's biography, and it was a long time ago, and I'm trying to remember, but Ford had this canyon out somewhere. I don't know if it was in Arizona or somewhere, and it was so cinematic and beautiful. It might have been out by Sonoma or something like that, but he would go, and it was like this top secret canyon that he would shoot a lot of his Westerns in, and it had this beautiful horizon that you're talking about that he shot a ton of his Westerns in. But I love the way Shane looked. HUD. Did you ever see HUD with Paul Newman?
Yeah.
Love that.
Yep.
And HUD was he's one of the first anti-heroes in Westerns. Dances with Wolves, I thought was beautiful. Legends of the Fall, we've talked about a few times, Jim Harrison's short story, but I thought that's a beautifully shot movie. There Will Be Blood, The Revenant. Those are all movies of note.
Yeah.
Okay, so we begin the episode, and Mercury just smoked one of the belters. And really, like Amos says, I believe the battle lines have been drawn. And this is really the episode where the battle lines have been drawn. And Mercury's in a standoff with the other belters, and they're about to rush him. And one of them says, he can't shoot us all. And immediately I thought of Steven Seagal in Above the Law.
Yep.
And I love 80s action. I was not a big Seagal guy, but I loved Above the Law. And that's the first scene that really got my attention, when this guy was like, he can't shoot us all. And he shoots him right in the head. He's like, and so that was a good moment. But
and they actually stole that moment, I believe, from Billy Jack. Because there's a moment exactly like that in Billy Jack.
What's Billy Jack?
You never saw Billy Jack? It was a late 60s, early 70s. It was a couple of movies about a guy who's Native American, who's like a martial artist, gets in fights with rednecks who are trying to, I can't remember the exact plot, but Clint, that's from Billy Jack, right?
Yeah, he's a veteran who comes back and gives amazing speeches right before he karates everybody. It's incredible.
Right before he karates the shit out of people.
Who's the lead actor?
Let me look it up, but I know that the big story about Billy Jack is that the guy who created it owned the movie and four-walled it himself all around the country and made it a hit and made a ton of money on Billy Jack, and then owned all the sequels and got real rich off of it. And the character of Billy Jack wore this crazy hat that was a hat he wore as a different character in another movie, and he essentially created the movie around this stupid hat.
Anyway, but there is a scene in Billy Jack that is exactly that scene from Above the Law.
Yeah, I've never seen that.
But I will say, give Seagal credit. He made two great movies. He's got a ton of
Under
shit,
Siege?
a ton of terribleness. Under Siege and Above the Law are both good movies.
Yeah, Under Siege.
Yeah.
Under Siege because Tommy Lee Jones is in it. Anything with Tommy Lee Jones is incredible.
Agreed. But those two are good movies.
Right. All right. So before Mercury can pull his cigar, lightning strikes the camp, destroys the camp. And I know Naomi figured out there was a pattern to this lightning. What was happening? What's going on with this lightning?
The idea there is that when Holden pulled out the root, cleared the circuit, and reactivated the machine that they were in, he and Miller were in, it's turning something back on in the planet. The planet is turning back on. And so that lightning strike is just this visual indication of whatever this process is going around the planet, activating a bunch of stuff, which is why it's so regular. It's so perfectly timed. It's just picture it like a big dynamo going around the planet, turning on machinery all around.
So that's what the lightning is doing. The lightning is turning things on.
Or it's just a visual indicator that is the thing that's happening.
Right.
Like it's an electrical discharge because of these things are coming on.
Right. And so the camp is without power. RCE has plenty of backup generators and things like that, but they're not sharing. The battle lines have been drawn. And Amos needs a generator. So he walks over like Billy Jack and fucking takes the generator. I will say, when we shot that, the actual fight was a lot longer, and it kind of went down at it. And I understand that it didn't need to be as long as it was, but why did it get cut down so short? Do you know, or do you have any knowledge of that?
I don't remember talking to Narain about the editorial choices on that. So I was there for all of season 4, but I had my blocks that I was producing. So when you guys were shooting 3 and 4, I was prepping 5 and 6 with Jeff Ulno. So I wasn't really paying attention to what they were doing on 3 and 4. And then when it went into editorial, I tended to go to editorial when my block was being edited, not when somebody else's block was being edited. So I didn't really get to talk to Narain about the editorial choices on 3 and 4.
Because that happens a lot. Sometimes you do these elaborate fight scenes and things like that, but as a whole or within the story, it ends up distracting from the main through line of what's really happening.
Yeah. Well, and what we tend to do on the Expanse more than anything else is, so stunt coordinators love to coordinate big, elaborate fight scenes. That's their favorite thing to do, right? So whenever you say, you write in a script, Amos fights 2 guys, the stunt coordinator is going to come back and they're going to have an elaborate thing with punches and counter punches and dodges and blocks and all that stuff.
And then you get egocentric actors that wants to add their thing into the fight scene.
Exactly.
And they want to make it all about them, and they want to take their shirts off. And
But what we wind up doing on the Expanse is we cut most of our fights down to just the most intense moments of violence. So that fight scene, the one you're talking about, it's cut down to Amos slams the generator down on one guy's foot. He punches the other guy in the face. It's quick. It's 1-2. It's just intense moments of pure violence without all the back and forth and dodging and blocking and all that crap.
And that's the way I like it. I mean, I like it moments like that because it's violent, it's quick, and it makes sense. He got the surprise, he got the jump on him, and it's how it usually is. I was hearing, I was listening to Taylor Sheridan talking about staging a firefight in Wind River, and he watched hundreds of hours of SWAT shootouts. And he says out of hundreds of hours, he maybe saw 2 that were longer than 8 seconds. And that everything is really fast, violent, and bloody and raw. And that's one of the things that I did like about it, is that it's quick to the point. Why didn't they shoot me?
They were about to. If if Wei hadn't shown up, we were probably going to start trying. I mean, Amos is gambling that they're not going to do it because I wind up having to think like Amos a lot because when we're doing these scripts, we'll have conversations with people. Why would Amos do this? Why wouldn't Amos do that? They always ask that. And Amos's math is very simple. He doesn't feel like they're going to be able to fuck with him because the Rocinante is parked right over a hill over here. And the Rocinante is like having an Abrams tank parked over the hill. And nobody else has one of those. So his thing is, these guys aren't idiots. They're not going to shoot me because if they do, those big 40 millimeter guns on the Rossi just start wrecking all the RCE stuff.
Yeah.
He's feeling pretty invulnerable right now.
Yeah.
Now, Wei comes over and says, my guys would have shot you. Amos doesn't actually believe that's true.
Yeah. And I understand the logic of it, and I do think it might have been a little bit impulsive because those guys might not have thought it through whereas like somebody like Mercury would have thought it through. Yeah. Like there's the Rossi over the horizon. They would have been, their egos would have been damaged and they would have pulled the gun. But anyway, this leads to my favorite scene in this episode where Mercury and Amos have a sit-down chat. And basically they sit down and Mercury's saying, I see you, and Amos is saying, I see you. And Mercury says, we are the same. And Amos says, no, we're not. We're not the same. We're both killers, but you get off on it. That's not the kind of killer that I am. And Amos knows that he knew very early on in the beginning of the episode. He goes, should I shoot Mercury? and Holden says, no, but think about all the trouble that would have been solved. He knew all of this was going to happen. He read and saw right through Mercury. He knows men like this. And when they sit down and they're having a conversation, Amos already knows. He's already figured it out. And Mercury comes to the conclusion in the conversation that we're going to end up bloody. And have you ever been in a situation like this? Have you ever been at a party or a get-together or in the elevator or at a football game or whatever, and you're around somebody and you're like, me and this person cannot coexist in the same space? Yeah. So
going back to what you were saying before, and then we'll come back to this, is one of my favorite things about writing for Amos is that Amos does the math in his head and jumps to the end. So we all went to high school. We know how fights happen in high schools. Two guys start jawing at each other. Then they shove each other for a while. Then one of them falls down and then they roll around for a while. And then maybe they get up and throw a punch or two, right? Amos is the guy who the person starts jawing at him and he goes, oh, this is going to end in a fight. I don't need to go through all the intermediate steps. I'm just going to punch him in the face right now. And then I just skip all that middle stuff because he doesn't have time for the middle stuff.
And it gives you a strategic advantage. And a lot of times, Amos has the strategic advantage because he sees through it so fast before the other guy.
Yeah, and so that's what Amos is doing here. He's going, this is going to go on for a while. You and I are going to jaw at each other. Holden's going to have his opinions on things. Eventually, at some point, I'm going to have to shoot you. So why don't I just do that now?
Right.
Like skip over all the middle stuff. You know, of course, Amos still listens to Holden, and Holden is the one who's hoping for the best. Right. Holden's the one going, maybe nobody has to be shot. Let's try to wind up in the space where nobody gets shot. Amos is the one going, that's pretty unrealistic, dude. We're going to have to shoot some people. But yes, I have been at parties like that, and you and I have actually had this conversation. I hate the peacocks, the wannabe alpha males, the guys who are trying to dominate everybody all the time and show that they're the biggest dick in the room. Those guys fucking drive me nuts, and I always push them. I always, like, the minute I see somebody's doing that, I can't stop myself. I just start fucking with them because it just drives me nuts, those guys. I just hate that whole, like, look what a badass I am, and that, like, sort of goofy alpha male version of things. It just fucking pisses me off. And so I'll just start taunting them. I'll just start making fun of them.
Right.
So far, they always just leave.
Yeah.
Like, I've never had one go, oh, are you fucking with me? And now we're going to have to fight. That's never happened. So I've been lucky, probably.
Yeah.
But, I can't help myself.
There's two versions of those guys. There's the guy that's the physical guy that thinks he's the alpha physical, but then there's the version where the guy's not necessarily physical, but he's the smartest guy, right? The smartest guy in the room. And I have there's a friend, I have a really close friend that, and he's a very, very smart guy. And what's interesting is that physical alpha does not trigger him. But if somebody comes in and is like talking above, that triggers him. And that's when he starts, because, that's when he starts. And I imagine in a lot of your circles, there's a lot of those peacocking happening going on.
There is. And here's the thing is, when somebody is legitimately a physically dangerous person, they're never that guy.
No.
They're never the guy walking around the room trying to act like a badass and trying to intimidate everybody.
But I'm talking about the smartest guy in the room.
No, that's what I'm saying is, I agree with your friend, because like I've been around some very dangerous guys. I've been around some guys that I would be terrified to get in a physical altercation with. And it never comes up because they're never that guy. They're never the guy who's like trying to intimidate anybody, because they're confident. They're self-assured. They don't need to do that to feel good about themselves. And I find that is also true with the people who are trying to act like the smartest guy in the room. The smartest guy in the room doesn't have to act like it. He's confident. He doesn't need to do that. Like prove that he's better than everybody else to make himself feel better. So I agree with your friend. Like that would trigger me too. Somebody's like talking down to everybody, like how smart I am. I'm married to a PhD from Cambridge. Some of my closest friends are like astrophysicists and like PhDs in other disciplines. None of the ones I hang out with act like they're smarter than you. Yes, they're fucking smarter than me, but why put on airs? They don't have to. They already established themselves. They're confident with what they know. There's no reason to do that. And in fact, the best smart people are the ones who are excited to share what they know with other people, not to show off, but because they think what they know is really interesting. And if other people are interested in it, they're excited to share it.
Yeah.
That's the kind of people I could hang out with. And on that same note, the true scary physical specimens that you would not want to fuck with, they're never the one trying to intimidate people. They tend to be the ones protecting people.
Yeah.
They tend to be the ones who are looking out for the little guy.
Right. And that's because anytime you see peacocking or anything like that, you can smell the weakness. You can smell the fear. You can see
it's a lack of confidence for sure.
It's a lack of confidence. And also, you're talking about people those super smart people that are in the room, they're also really interested in learning what other people have to say or what other people are talking about.
They are. Yep. That is 100% right. The thing I most like about hanging out with my wife in groups is she is often the smartest and best educated person in any room she's in. And she's also the person who most asks questions. When she meets somebody who knows something she doesn't know, she's not talking about what she knows to try to impress them. She's asking them questions about what they know because she really wants to understand what they know. So it's never about, look how impressive I am. It's always about, oh, you know about that thing? That's so interesting. Can you tell me about it? And that's the major difference.
So Mercury bugged the camp, and he hears about this small band of people that are going to take him out. And he preemptively attacks, throws a smoke bomb, smokes them out, and then executes them all. Now, at this point, the thing is you can't blame Mercury for some of the things that he's doing because they killed 28 of his men, and they blew up his ship coming in. He's surrounded by enemies. He doesn't know who to trust. So there's a great scene with Lucia when he goes in for an adjustment, but he's really going in to read her because he overheard some suspicious things when he's being bugged, and he knows that she might be a part of the blowing up the ship. It's so full of tension and suspense because he's reading her. She can sense that he's reading her. And he's twisting the thing, and he's finding out what's happening. And I think that's a great scene. So they smoke these people out. They come, they execute them, and there is that image of Mercury standing over the guy and pulling the trigger and shooting him. And as an actor, and I would like to talk to Byrne about this, but as an actor, you ask yourself the questions, and as a writer, as you're writing it, and sometimes they line up, but you ask yourself has he killed before he's gotten to this camp? And if he has killed before, did it make him feel the way that this is making him feel? Or is he discovering this in the moment? Was the belter that he shot at the beginning, was that the first time he's actually shot somebody? And goddamn, it was like a drug? And it was something that Amos smelled in him before he even did it? And then at the end, is this a realization when he was kind of relishing him on the ground underneath his power and shooting him in the face? And those are the interesting questions, is like the history. And you ask yourself as a writer those questions too, right? When you're creating the character.
Yeah, I like that you bring that up because, you and I have talked about the fact that I'm interested in taking an acting class. I have no interest in being an actor myself. I'm too pretty to be an actor. But I'm interested in the craft of acting. I think a lot of people don't give enough respect to how much craft goes into well-made performance and what good acting requires from the people who choose that profession. Those sorts of questions are really interesting to me. You know, you asking yourself as an actor in the moment, what was my character feeling right now? What is this awakening in him? Or what need of mine is this feeding? I think those are really interesting questions to ask. And you're right. As a writer, you do think about that. Now, we certainly hint that Murtry has been in a lot of violent altercations before this. You know, we certainly hint at that. And especially later in the season where Murtry's talking to Way and saying, you know, he's always been the one to get blood on his hands, but he's never the one who gets paid. Mm-hmm. Right. So you get the sense that Murtry is a guy that RCE sends in when they know some shit's going to go down.
Yeah. Well,
he's the guy for that kind of mission.
What's interesting, what would be interesting for me to watch as a viewer, if I was playing that part, what would be an interesting process for me would be the discovery. So maybe in the past, I would look at it and say, yeah, I had blood on my hands and I killed, but it was always under the right authorization, the right, you know, you go through this, you did it all by the book. But the resentment of these people that are getting away with things and the way that they talk to me, and I wasn't able to react the way that I want to react, and the bitterness and the anger, and I would let that build up. And then when they sabotage my ship and kill 28 of my people, that would be the thing that would push me over the edge. And then the discovery of when that Belter was challenging me and trying to intimidate me, to unleash and shoot him, and they weren't able to do anything about it, to feel that, to make that intoxicate me and to feel that power from that. And then just because that starts to morph into the true antagonist, right? And then he smokes out these people and he comes out and he stands over him and he's watching him gurgle and feeling what that feels like, because this is always what he wanted to do, but he was always, you know, a company man trying to do the right thing, going through the bureaucracy, but he's in charge now, God damn it. And these people are going to pay for what they did to me. You know, Byrne would be a good, fun guest to have on.
We should definitely have Byrne come on. Byrne is great. He's a great conversation. And if we could get him to come on, that would be fantastic. I think you're right. I think your analysis of this moment is right. And I think the later episodes in this season bear that out. In the same way that Amos has instantly sussed out what Murtry is and where this is all going to lead, I think Murtry is the first one on the ground here to realize, oh, this is the Old West. We're months from repercussions. So, you know, all the jobs he did before this were in the solar system where if you murder somebody, there are police, there are laws, there's repercussions for the actions that you take. He's the first one hit the ground here and go, there's no law here. I'm the only law here. There's no repercussions for things. I'm not going to be arrested for anything. And I think you're right that the combination of his inherently violent way of dealing with things and suddenly the fetters are off. The shackles are off. He can do whatever he wants. I think that is an intoxicating moment for him. I think you're reading that exactly right.
Those moments always terrify me, the being isolated like that. You know, so they're on this planet, they're away. You know, it is the Wild West. If you read these old Western books, you know, with people out in the middle of nowhere, you know, and somebody coming across them and they can do whatever they want to do. And especially if there's somebody with bad intentions that they come across with these homesteaders out in the middle of nowhere, that isolation, like Dead Calm with Nicole Kidman, when they're out when she's trapped with that guy on the yacht and the cavalry's not coming. There's nobody out at sea, that she's just alone, trapped in this small space with this complete and total psycho.
I mean, that's also what like Lord of the Flies is about.
Yeah.
Is you take a bunch of people and you drop them in a place where there is no longer civilization. There's no longer a civilizing factor. And what do people turn into when civilization is stripped away from them? You know, and Amos actually has a line in season 5 where he says, the thing with civilization is it keeps you civil. Mm-hmm. And season 4 is all about, oh, we're all acting like civilization came out here with us, but it didn't. Mm-hmm. And Murtry even says that later to Holden. He says, you're acting like because you're civilized, you brought civilization with you. Mm-hmm. But you didn't. You didn't bring it with you. It's not here. Mm-hmm. We pretend that it is, but it's not.
Yeah.
You know, Murtry is the one who made that logical leap, and he's way ahead of everybody else.
And, you know, I love that about season 5 because civilization is the glue that holds everybody together and keeps the system running. But that glue is very fragile and easy to break. as soon as you start to see cracks or things fall, then it becomes about the primal instinct of survival. And that brings out the worst in all of us.
Well, and as Amos talks about in season 5, when the facade of civilization falls away, it becomes tribal instantly. And everybody picks their tribe. You know, for most people, it's their family. Like for you, I'm sure if shit went down, it's you, Jen, and the boys, right? That's who you're protecting.
Yeah.
And everybody else is secondary to that. And that happens very quickly. You know, we've had a lot of sort of natural disasters here in the United States and in the world. And you see how quickly the veneer of civilization just is gone.
Yeah.
You know, what happened with Katrina. Like, everybody's very civilized. A flood comes, knocks some buildings down. You know, some people get killed. And everybody's right back to, I'll murder you for a bottle of water.
Yeah.
Like, it happens that fast.
Yeah. See, you're such a simple man because you're a tribe of two.
Yeah.
and if you don't care if the world burns down, as long as that tribe of two are good, you're good.
Yep.
So the structure starts spinning. So the lightning went through, everything got turned on, the structure's spinning, and Holden makes the call to nuke that structure. I find this a bit, it makes sense to me, and I want you to go into this decision as we do it, but it's definitely certainly different than this Holden's decisions in the past. And I think maybe he's come to realize that he can't trust Miller, that he did this thing, he turned this thing on, and he doesn't have any time. And if he wants to save these people, he's got to take this thing out.
Holden's thing, and Miller calls him out on this multiple times in the show, Holden's thing is he thinks he has to save everybody all the time. Mm-hmm. And when that thing starts heading for the camp, and it's throwing dirt up he talks about the fact that it's throwing dirt up like a kilometer across this gigantic area that this device is just plowing up the ground, and realizing that if it hits the camp, those people are, even if they get out of the camp, they're still going to die because everything they have that they need to survive is in that camp. So this thing is going to kill, one way or another, kill everybody who lives on the planet. And that it's a Holden thing. It's like, I got to save those people. And what's the only way he knows of to save those people is he's yelling for Miller to show up. Miller's not showing up. Nobody's there to turn the off switch. What can you do? Mm-hmm. So, you know, what he can do is he can see if it will blow up and stop it that way.
So Nancy Gal announced that she's running against Avasarala. And Avasarala has that funny line where she said everybody gets a pony and a blowjob. But Avasarala gets a little dirt on Nancy Gal, and she realized that Nancy Gal might have cheated to get to school. So at this point in the future, haven't we learned anything from Lori Loughlin? I mean, are we still doing this shit in the future?
Of course. Look, the reality is that people of privilege are always going to game the system so that their children get the best of everything. That is never going to end. And
because that, you know, when you have that maternal instinct triggered, it's about survival again. And you're like, my kids are going to get the best of everything that I can give them within my power.
Yeah, I think this is very one-sided because I don't think anybody says my kids should get the best of everything and I don't care if somebody else's kids suffer. I don't think anybody ever makes that second part of the logic, right? I think everybody just thinks, I want my kids to have the best of everything.
Yeah.
And you don't think about the fact that by giving your kids the best, maybe somebody else's kids are getting less. That's never part of the math that you're
like. If you were going to play Lori Loughlin, how would she justify this? And honestly, it's little bitty steps where you look at it and say, okay, my kid is not doing as well as she can in school, but I know she has the potential. She's just dealing with these sort of things. And so now she's not making the grades. But if she, and some people believe that higher education is survival. That is life or death. If they don't make it there, there's so many things that are intertwined, identity, status, that they feel as if life or death. So if she doesn't make it into this college, she's not going to have a life. And I don't want her to suffer for foolish mistakes. And I know that she has the potential, and I know she's smart enough, and I know my neighbors down the street are doing this thing, and I know they're doing it, and their kids are going to get there. So this is really the only way, and they get to that point where they do that. They're not thinking of all the other ramifications, how that impacts the world and their community around them.
Yeah, I think that is completely true. And I think most people in the same situation with the same resources, I think most parents would make the same decision. I don't have kids myself, but most of my friends do. And I see the decision-making process when it comes to their kids. And if you can give your kid an advantage, most parents are going to give their kid that advantage because they want to see their kids succeed. They want to see them have the best life that they can have.
Right.
And as I said, it's a very one-sided thought process because it's about their kid, and it feels very positive because I'm giving my kid something that they should have, and you're only thinking of the positive side of it. And as you said, you're not thinking about the ramifications for other people.
Right.
That's just not part of the thinking.
For sure, Clint's going to bribe his little girl's way into everything for her life. There's something that whenever you, right, Clint?
I don't plan on bribing. I'm simply training her to be a higher grade of human who excels at everything she's tasked with.
And Clint is a billionaire, so he's got the financial resources to throw around. Like if his daughter can't get into Harvard, he'll just buy Harvard.
I'm going to use my billions to instead just die violently and have her Batman.
Nice.
You're gonna specifically engineer your life to have her be Batman. Like you're gonna plan it. You're gonna have you're gonna hire guys to kill you at the right time in front of her to traumatize her. You're gonna have the Batcave, all that shit set up for her, and then all that how it work. And what if she decides she doesn't want to be Batman at the end?
I guess I do need to mention that I have already prepaid her tuition in a number of ninja academies.
Oh, okay, excellent.
Nice.
Nice. But Clint, correct me if I'm wrong. There is something. You are a different man the day before your child is born and the day after your child. There is something that awakens in you that's a bit primal that you look at. Like there are times when you see other parents when you don't have kids and you're like, what the fuck? Why are they doing that? Or what's that? And then when you have a kid, you're like, I get it.
I mean, she's great. I love her very much. I'm waiting for her to become interesting.
Okay, psychopath. So Bobby's nephew gets kidnapped by a mysterious drug dealer that they were making off-market Jell-O. Sort of looks like they were making like off-market Jell-O on Mars, but
they're making glow-in-the-dark Jell-O.
Oh, glow-in-the-dark Jell-O. And so she meets this mysterious man. He asks her to leave a door unlocked so they can go in and steal something. Now, one thing that I think Dan, but all the writer team did that I think is really smart is they have her go to the police first. Yeah. Because at this point, and if you're a writer and you're listening to this or whatever, but at this point, her back isn't against the wall. And you wouldn't truly understand why Bobby would compromise even everything that she's been through, even that she's been betrayed by her country, that she's been stripped of her titles, that she's been disillusioned with this dream and ideology that is Mars. And then this thing presents itself to her, but her moral compass is still intact. And so her back is not against the wall yet. And to have her go to the police, and he is the police, and he sits down and he rationalizes, then it makes sense that she would go do this. And it's a smart detail that I want to draw attention to.
Well, and we often talk about the parallels between the USSR and Mars, in how they're sort of crafted. Because the USSR was a planned economy, right? Like Mars is a planned economy. It's very authoritarian. It's very top down. It's very structured. The government has a lot of influence in individual citizens' lives, what kind of jobs they have and all that stuff. In those ways, it's very similar. And the thing that is true of those sort of societies is that the biggest criminals in those societies are the people in power. It's the cops, it's the politicians, it's the party members. Those guys are the criminals. Look what happened when the USSR fell. When the USSR fell, their version of the CIA, they all just became mobsters. That's who the Russian mob is. Leftover intelligence agents from the days of the USSR. The politicians, they all became criminals. They all became mob bosses because they were already sort of that thing to begin with. And then when the society collapses, they just shift right into the criminal versions of themselves. And so what we're showing here with Mars is that process is happening. The social structure on Mars is starting to crack. And these people in power who were above the law when the social structure existed, they still think they're above the law when social structure starts to collapse. And they just shift right into being criminals without a misstep.
Russian history fascinates me, and I've read a lot on Putin and his climb through the KGB, and he was a company man, and when the fall happened, you're exactly right in how you said it, where these guys that he was basically at the top of the pyramid, right? He was at the top of the power structure. And in a lot of ways, they saw their way of life and everything, this structure and everything that they worked to rise to the top at crumble. And it's really about, no, you're not going to destroy our power. You're not going to take away our power and what we worked so hard to create. And we're going to maintain this by any means necessary.
Yep.
And
anybody who doesn't think Putin is just a mobster is crazy. Right. That dude is just a mobster. He happens to run a whole country, but he's a mobster.
I just keep waiting for a blow dart to just come out the screen and hit you in the neck and hit the ground. I didn't say anything bad about Putin, for the record. Okay, this is Ty that was saying all the bad shit about Putin. No, I'm a big Drago fan. Russia's good with me. So she ends up leaving the door open. They go in to steal. She sees that there's a lot of OPA involved. The plot thickens, makes it interesting. And they are stealing things. What are they stealing?
So that specific thing that she goes in and checks is a thing for capturing and decoding tight beam messages. That's really all it is. It's just a part of a tight beam communication array that allows you to capture and decode tight beam messages. She just wants to make sure it's not a weapon. When she determines that it's not a weapon, that's when she leaves the door open.
Right. So let's move on. Our Patreon members, they chose the list today, and they chose best disaster movies, which is a fun topic. And then, obviously, in this episode, there's a lot of disasters happening. So, but to narrow this list down, I was thinking about it because it's like, well, what happened so far? But then I thought about it. This whole season has every kind and type of disaster you can have. So basically any disaster, I don't need the list yet. So, but basically any disaster movie.
Well, this according to Joseph, this is not just disasters. This is extreme weather.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think it could be any, because there's the sickness that they get in their eyes, the flooding of the cave. They're basically every type of disaster.
So you would just want to list any sort of movie conflict.
Well, the problem with having it be any kind of disaster is that list, I think, may be a little too big.
Yeah, I know, but not if you just think about your favorite movies that are disaster movies. Then the list does not become too big.
Daddy's back. Daddy says make it weather.
Okay, let's. All right, throw the
Mussolini is telling us to run the trains on time here and stick to the list.
Yeah. Okay. That makes okay. Well, I guess I'm just trying to craft the whole thing for me to get Airplane in there. I just want to talk about Airplane, so I was trying to do the whole situation to make Airplane work.
Okay, we will do an Airplane retrospective at some point so we can all talk about Airplane.
All right, I've been trying to make Airplane work for a while. Okay, so I'm going to read the list that Joseph has. We're going to do best extreme weather movies because it is fair, because this movie is more about weather, even though alien shit is making it happen.
Well, let's give a shout out to Renee Bouchard for the list. Or for the idea.
Oh, this was Renee Bouchard's idea.
Yeah,
thank you, Renee.
Yeah, so thank you, Renee.
We appreciate it, Renee. This is an exciting list. It's going to be fun. I've seen all of these movies except Sharknado.
Yeah, so we got Twister, Day After Tomorrow, Perfect Storm, The Shining, that's interesting. Snowpiercer, The Martian, Jurassic Park, The Thing, Sharknado. Sharknado, get off my list. The Fog, Die Hard 2, Poseidon Adventure, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, The Mist, The Abyss, Star Wars, the Hoth stuff, Ice Age, The Revenant, Everest, The Hateful Eight, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. That's funny. Wizard of Oz, Dante's Peak, Chronicles of Riddick, Geostorm, Alive, Storm of the Century, Frozen, The Impossible, The Wandering Earth, When Worlds Collide, and Cliffhanger. Wow, Cliffhanger, getting some Stallone on this list. We got Noah, Groundhog Day, Dog Day Afternoon, The Birds, Star Trek 3, Key Largo.
Okay, I have a few questions. I have questions about some of these, because if we're talking about weather movie, keep that list up. If we're talking about weather movies like The Birds,
yeah, I don't think The Birds belongs on the list. And in fact, the person put it on the list, put a question mark after it. So I don't think The Birds really goes on that list. Star Trek 3, I'm not sure Star Trek 3 belongs on the list either, because that's like an artificial planet that's collapsing.
And then cliffhanger. I mean, the weather. I mean, they're on top of a mountain. It's just normal weather for the mountain. It's not like it's.
Yeah, it's not like crazy surprise weather.
Yeah, it's not this thing. So Twister is case in point. Day After Tomorrow, case in point. Perfect Storm. The Shining. Well, I mean, there is a snowstorm.
There is the snowstorm, which keeps them from being able to leave the building for sure. That is true. I don't know if it would go on because I don't think the weather is central to the plot other than it's cold outside. They know it's cold outside, so they don't want to go outside.
Yeah. It keeps them from escaping, but it's not.
Yeah.
You know, like Twister, the weather is the point. The weather is
Twister, Day After Tomorrow, Perfect Storm, all of those, the weather is the point. I would even argue that in Snowpiercer, the weather is the point because that's the thing that's keeping people trapped in this train. Right. The Shining, I don't know. The Martian does the inciting incident in The Martian is a dust storm that knocks the Matt Damon character out and forces them to lift the ship off.
Right.
I mean, so I mean, the weather is kind of a thing,
and that's the thing that he's up against. Jurassic Park, I would say no, because that's
the thing. I think the thing again, yes, part of what's keeping them in the base is that it's cold outside, but it's always cold outside. Mm-hmm. It's not like they're surprised that it's cold outside in the thing.
Because and here's one way that I think you can look at it in the thing. If the aliens never showed up, they would continue as usual.
Yeah. Exactly.
Whereas the
weather is not driving the plot.
Right. Whereas the Martian, the dust storm, if the dust storm showed up and nothing was the same after the dust storm.
Yeah. The dust storm in The Martian drives the plot for sure.
And in The Shining,
guys, this level of rigor really makes me happy.
And
keep going. It's great.
In The Shining, if it was only the weather, the movie would continue if the hotel's ghost didn't drive Jack Torrance mad.
Yeah, exactly. So the weather isn't really driving the plot.
Sharknado,
now,
get it out of there.
They've got the fog on this list, which is interesting because the fog, of course, is a supernatural event that is allowing these zombie undead pirates to return to the town and exact vengeance. So I think you could put it on this list because the weather does drive the plot, but it is supernatural weather, which I'm not sure how I feel about that. Now, the movie that absolutely belongs on this list is Die Hard 2 because the weather drives the plot in Die Hard 2 because Holly's plane can't land because of a snowstorm. So John McClane has to fuck up some terrorists and blow up an airplane so that she gets some landing lights to land her airplane.
Approved.
Poseidon Adventure for sure because that massive wave drives the entire plot. I think that definitely belongs on this list.
Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. I don't know if I've seen that.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen it either. The Mist, again, The Mist is like this sort of, it's not supernatural. It's supposed to be like a science experiment got wrong. But I think if the fog goes on the list, I think The Mist can go on the list too.
Yeah.
Because it's, this artificial weather event.
This is an interesting one because weather is really important to the Abyss, but is not the...
Actually, weather does drive the plot because weather's what severs their connection to the ships on top.
Right.
Because the big storm comes, it destroys the connection to the ships on top. And when the connection is destroyed, that huge crane falls on them.
Yeah.
Which fucks up their base.
Because if it wasn't for the weather, they would have just continued as possible and not discovered anything down there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Ice Age, obviously, the Ice Age is a big weather event. The Revenant, I guess the weather, I mean, like, I don't think anybody who lives in that part of, like, Canada/Alaska is surprised that it's cold outside.
Yeah.
But, but it is cold.
I think the betrayal was the big thing in The Revenant. And then he had to survive the elements, but the weather didn't necessarily drive that.
There's an argument to be made for Hateful Eight that the weather drives the plot because the weather traps them in the haberdashery while all the events happen. So, I mean, although there's also an argument to be made that the Hateful Eight is like the Thing in that everybody knows that it's cold there, and like it's not like an unusual thing. It's just that they all happen to be trying to kill each other while it's cold.
If it was a nice day, would they have stopped and had to hold up in the haberdashery?
They would not.
Yeah. So I guess the weather is.
The weather does drive the plot in that way for sure.
Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Not a movie.
It is a movie. It's every bit a movie. It's a movie based off the song, but it's a movie.
Made for television, less than an hour. Not a movie.
Clint, I'm so glad you're back.
Yeah. Wizard of Oz, I mean, there's like this supernatural twister that takes you to Oz.
But is it a supernatural twister, or is it just a...
Well, it's a twister that's powerful enough it hurls you to a fictional land, it hurls you to a fantasy world.
But if that
seems a little supernatural.
If that tornado never happened, Dorothy would be living on the farm.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, if the twister doesn't happen, the movie doesn't happen, for sure. I don't think Dante's Peak counts because I don't think volcanoes count as weather.
Volcanoes have an impact on the weather.
Yeah, but I don't think of them as
not
weather.
In that movie.
Yeah.
Their problem is not that the volcano has caused the ambient temperature to raise 8 degrees.
I mean, I love Chronicles of Riddick. I'm one of the 7 people in America who likes that movie. But I don't think that's really a weather movie. Storm of the Century, definitely a weather movie. And Wandering Earth and When Worlds Collide, that's not weather. That's planets running into each other.
Yeah. Noah's definitely a weather.
Noah is definitely a weather movie.
Yeah. Now, I would love to talk about Groundhog Day.
I think Groundhog Day belongs on this list.
I think you're right.
Because
I forgot about that.
If there's not the snowstorm, he's not trapped there. He's not trapped in Punxsutawney.
But now let me ask you a question. Was he destined to have that Groundhog Day at that time no matter what? Or was it something about the town? Like the snowstorm kept him in that town, but is it the town that triggered his being looped in a time loop?
There's no way to know. There's no way to know. But
we should count it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The weather traps him in Punxsutawney, and everything that happens to him from then on happens in Punxsutawney. The weather's super important. He keeps trying to escape Punxsutawney at the beginning of the movie and keeps being stopped by the weather.
Yeah.
So it's like it's a repeated thing. Yeah. Phil Ryerson? Needle Nose Ned the Head?
It's me!
Ask
Needle Nose Head.
Your sister Patty to the prom.
That guy, that actor who's in everything, that is my favorite.
Stephen
Tobolowsky. That is my favorite role that he's ever played. He kills me in that.
He's fantastic in that movie.
And then when Bill Murray gives him a hug, and he's, why don't we just get a room? Sleep in.
Yeah.
I
gotta go.
I gotta go. And then he runs.
The line I use all the time is, I got friends that live and die by the actuarial tables, but it's all just big one crapshoot. Anywho, am I right or am I right? and when I use that line on somebody and they know what I'm doing, that person and I are instant best friends.
Oh, that is a quick sifter. If you can quote Groundhog Day and they know it, then we are going to be friends.
I am also agreeing with Key Largo. The storm in Key Largo drives the plot of Key Largo.
Well, if Groundhog Day is on this list, that's number one.
Yeah, I agree. It's hard to have a list that with Groundhog Day on it where Groundhog Day is not number one. As you and I have talked about, I think Groundhog Day is one of the few perfect movies.
Needle Nose Ned?
Ned the Head?
Ned the Head? Yeah, that is a perfect movie, and that would be fun. We could do just to sit down and talk about Groundhog Day.
Yeah, it's hard to have Groundhog Day on any list and not have it top the list.
As a writer, when you come across like a Groundhog Day or like a Die Hard, do you sit and just admire the structure and how perfect it is?
So yes, I do, but it's from two angles. One, obviously the script is great, but secondly, as a producer, the editing is fantastic. Groundhog Day may be one of the most perfectly edited movies I've ever seen. And if you read the original script, there is a ton of material in the original script that they just cut. They just left on the cutting room floor. And every cut they made, every decision they made editorially was the right one. Because the pace of that movie is perfect. One of the things that Groundhog Day does is it introduces a concept. It repeats that concept to the point where you've seen every variation of the joke. And just when you've seen every variation of the joke, they get out of it.
Yeah.
Like they never overstay their welcome with any concept, which to me, obviously the director is a genius, but whoever was working on editing with that director, cutting that movie, the two of them crafted a perfect thing.
Right. and Bill Murray's arc and the way and where he comes at the end, and it's so perfect and subtly done with each scene and seeing the difference in between the days and him going through all the phases. Have you ever? I heard an interview with Harold Ramis, and also there's a lot of fan theories out there of how long Bill Murray was actually trapped in that day. And I often think about this. Like when I'm bored, I'll just think about like how long was he trapped in that day. And there are people out there that try to figure it out depending on the things that happen. And then if he's doing the math on like how long will it take him to be proficient at the piano and stuff. But there's people that say 38 years, 12 years. How long do you think he was stuck in that day?
I don't know, but it was a long time. I engage with Groundhog Day in a slightly different way than most people do. Most people, I think, need to feel like their life is progressing and that it's evolving and progressing. I think that's very important to people. They want to get married. They want to have kids. They want to progress in their career. Those things are all very important to them. I just enjoy being alive. So if I was trapped in Groundhog Day and it was like, as long as I stay in here, I'm immortal, I'd be okay with that because I just enjoy being alive. Like I could get up every morning. I could go to that coffee shop. I could have a great breakfast. I don't have to worry about cholesterol or getting fat. I could like try all the different things there are to do in the town. I could have an infinite number of conversations. Like I think I would be fine in Groundhog Day for a very long time before I got bored because I just like being alive.
Well, I think that is the point of the movie. I think that in the movie, he's always like, I got to go. I got to get out of here. I got this thing. And he was ambitious and he only cared about himself. But being stuck in that day really got him to a place where he didn't move forward until he just embraced the moment and just found peace within that day and stopped trying to fight and surrendered to the day and to the moment. See,
and the problem with that is I would do that immediately, and so I would immediately lose my immortality. I don't like that.
But here's the thing that would scare me is because eventually he moved on to the next day. So what if the day that you moved on was the day that you robbed the bank, or the day that you killed somebody, or the day that, and you're like, wait, no, I don't want to move on this day. He just happened to move on one of his most perfect day, but he did some shit, He
did some shit,
and
obviously they imply that he robbed that armored car many, many, many times, and I'm sure like the first 100 times he did it, he got caught,
right?
Like to get the timing right and stuff. So I'm betting there were a lot of Groundhog Days where he just sat in jail for the day.
What if one of those days you get caught and you wake up and you're in the jail cell next day?
That would suck.
That would be that'd be a funny little movie, is where somebody thinks they're in a loop day. And it turns out they were wrong and they're not in a loop day, but because they've seen so many loop day movies like Palm Springs and Groundhog Day and everything, they're like, wait a minute, I'm in a loop day. And it just happened coincidentally that it was just the same events and things happen, and then they start doing all this shit and going crazy because they've seen all the movies, and then they realize that they're not in a loop day.
So like every concept that has ever been done or ever could be done, this is a Rick and Morty episode. There is a Rick and Morty episode where Morty gets a device that allows him to do loops like that and just starts doing a bunch of crazy shit. And it is revealed later that Rick reveals later that everything he did actually happened.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, man. I'm not as original as I thought. What is Rick and Morty? What is that again?
It's a cartoon.
Is it on Cartoon Network?
It's on Adult Swim.
Is it like Archer? Like that kind of humor?
No, it's not like Archer at all, but it is equally as funny, if not more funny.
Really?
Rick and Morty may be the funniest cartoon that I've seen in the last couple of years.
Really?
It's fucking hilarious.
We should do a Rick and Morty episode. I'll go catch up on him.
And Joseph is claiming that he's Mr. Meeseeks, which, fair. I think that's fair. I think he's allowed to claim that.
Okay.
So for our list, we got... Joseph correctly put Die Hard 2 at number 0, because of course it is.
Yeah.
Groundhog Day should definitely be number 1.
Right.
What are you thinking for 2 through 5, man?
Well, I want to say, though, you and I, we talk about Die Hard so much, but I think we should do, and I know we talked about doing a live watch and certain things like that, but I definitely think we need to do an episode, because Die Hard There is a lot of humor that we have with our fanship of Die Hard, but it really is a well-crafted, well-written movie. And
the first movie. The first movie is a perfect movie.
The first movie is a perfect movie. And, people that are listening to this that are interested in movies and writing, and there's so many great setups in there that are so subtle that you don't even notice. And I would love to just do an episode where we just talk about, because we talk about Die Hard, but we need to explain, it's a perfect movie and why it's a perfect movie.
Yep. Of the ones that are on the list, some of my favorites are The Martian, The Abyss. I don't love Twister, but as far as catastrophic weather movies go, it's probably one of the best examples of that. I'd go ahead and throw that on the list at number 5. It's not my favorite of that kind of movie, but as an example of the genre, it's perfect. It is a perfect example of the genre. And it's got Bill Paxton, and my Bill Paxton love is strong.
Hey, Mamie. Hey, Grammy. I agree with you 100% because if you gave me these list of movies and said, list these are your favorite top 5, I would not have Twister in that top 5. But because of the topic, my first thought, the first movie on my list was Twister because it is quintessential to this disaster movie, and it checks all the boxes in a way. So I agree with your logic 100%. I think The Abyss needs to be on there.
The Abyss is a pretty great movie, and the weather does drive the plot.
Right. I do like The Martian. I really enjoyed that movie.
It's funny because The Martian takes place on a planet where we don't think of it as having weather, but Mars actually does have weather.
And it has shitty weather.
It has shitty weather.
So, but here's the thing. Is it a disaster weather or is that just normal weather for Mars?
Well, that kind of sandstorm does happen there. I don't know the frequency. I don't know how often those things happen. I think it ticks the boxes because it's something that the crew didn't see coming.
Yeah.
And that radically altered their plans because it was powerful enough it was going to knock their ship over.
Right.
And so they had to do an emergency liftoff. So I think that does fit the criteria of, we expect some weather on Mars. We expect some dust storms on Mars. Holy shit, the mother of all dust storms just showed up and is about to knock our ship over.
Right. Is the Thing on the list still, or do we get rid of it?
I think the Thing didn't stay on the list because it's not the unexpected weather.
I think it is, and I also think the Thing is on so many of our other lists. It shouldn't be on this list. But then if I think about The Day After Tomorrow or movies like that, like Twister, it is definitely a great example of the topic, but it's not a movie that I like enough to put on the list. And now Snowpiercer, what version of Snowpiercer are we going with?
We're talking about the movie, right?
Yeah. Which one though? There's 2 movies.
There are?
Oh no, I was thinking of something else. Wait, what? Snowpiercer's a TV show, right?
Yeah, there's a movie and then they made a TV show.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I have never seen the TV show. I've only seen the movie.
I haven't either.
So Snowpiercer is like the sequel to Day After Tomorrow, right? It's like Snowpiercer is what happens after there's a catastrophic weather event, like 100 years in the future after Day After Tomorrow is kind of the idea. So Snowpiercer is taking place in a world that has had a catastrophic weather event, but that weather event has been ongoing for like the last 100 years.
Right.
So I don't know if I would pick that one.
I have a lot of respect for The Wizard of Oz. I don't know if you remember, but when I was a kid, they would play it once a year, and that was like a big deal. We would watch The Wizard of Oz, and it's a classic and has that kind of staying power.
I agree about Wizard of Oz. I have enormous respect for it too. But I got to say, if there's one slot left, I got to go with my boy Humphrey Bogart. That slot would be Key Largo for me. I am a gigantic Humphrey Bogart fan. He's one of my favorite actors ever. Anything Humphrey Bogart is in is an automatic watch for me. So
that's fair.
That would be my vote. But you get a vote too.
No, I didn't see Key Largo down there, and I agree with you about Humphrey Bogart. I mean, I think Casablanca is probably one of the movies that I've seen the most, and there is a swagger and a confidence that he has that is just so rare. He's one of those actors that you feel empowered after watching him. Yeah. And he's so smart and so scrappy. He's a type of hero that we lost touch with in the 80s, right?
I agree.
That their intellect and their toughness, but they weren't superheroes. And they smoked and they drank and they made bad decisions.
Bogart's not a good-looking man. He's not like a screen idol good looks.
Yeah.
But he, like you said, he has that confidence. He exudes confidence.
Right.
And as you said, toughness. His version of the Maltese Falcon is one of my top 5 favorite movies of all time.
Right. The John Huston. Yeah.
Oh my God. It's John Huston, Humphrey Bogart, like the cast, the rest of the cast is amazing. The script, I think, is amazing. We could do a whole podcast just on Humphrey Bogart movies because I am a huge
Huston directed Key Largo as well. It also has Lauren Bacall.
That's right. Because there's that song, Sailing Away to Key Largo.
Did Huston do the Treasure Sierra Madre as well?
Yes.
Wow. Man, we got to do our top 5 Bogart movies.
The Huston Bogart combo is a pretty powerful 1-2 punch.
Hey, Clint, did we see Maltese Falcon when we went to that noir festival?
Yes, we did.
I agree with you. That's one of the great movies. So yeah, definitely Key Largo we'll put up there. But Maltese Falcon.
Yep.
And also, like as a writer, do you admire, like as a screenwriter, do you admire Maltese Falcon on those levels?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I think it's a brilliant script, and it has one of my favorite comeback lines ever. When the cops are bracing Bogart and they say, "We know you've been running around all over town causing trouble." He says, "Stop me when you can."
I love too at the end that the thing that they were after, and it basically there's a thing in all the screenwriting books or whatever, they always talk about the Maltese Falcon is you got to have that thing, that MacGuffin, that thing that people are going after. It doesn't have to really pan out or be that, but it has to be the thing that they think is important. Yeah,
the Maltese Falcon is the classic film MacGuffin. Yeah, it doesn't matter what that thing is. It's the only thing that matters is everybody wants it. It's the great grandfather of the briefcase in Pulp Fiction.
Right.
We never know what's in that briefcase. We just know that everybody wants it.
Right. Man, this was fun. Like talking about Groundhog Day, talking about Bogart movies. This is why we do the podcast. Even though you are a bestseller, it's time to check back in. But we also need to get back to books. We need to do some book list as well. Okay, there's our list. Die Hard 2, Groundhog Day, Key Largo, The Martian, The Abyss, and Twister. I wonder how our Patreon fans did. Okay, Patreon's top 5. Twister, Day After Tomorrow, The Perfect Storm, The Shining, and Snowpiercer. So they stayed more on theme than we did.
I think we eliminated some of these movies for, I think, valid reasons. But I see why they did the list.
Only The Shining is the only one we eliminated, because if there is a top 5 list and The Shining is in the pool, The Shining is going to be on that top 5 list. So we needed to eliminate it.
Yeah, I agree. I think for me, the reason our list doesn't quite line up is because I didn't like Day After Tomorrow. I thought it was kind of a dumb movie, so I didn't want it to be on the list.
I didn't either. Guys, thank you so much. This was fun, and we appreciate all the support, all the fun things, the little things that you guys are making. We love them. The one where we fucking on the moon. That killed me, and thank you so much for all that you guys are doing. This has turned out to be such a fun thing and a fun fan interaction, and we really enjoy it. Say goodbye, Ty.
Goodbye, Ty.
Bingo!